Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode. It's going to be a great show today. I got my buddy Adam Coleman here, and we changed up the name, so it's now called Crew Call. We just figured we'd do something a little different. So, without further ado, I'll bring in my good friend, Mr. Adam Coleman.
What's up, man?
Hey
Can you
Adam,
hear
how you
me?
doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Good to see you,
So,
man.
thanks for joining the show today. It has been a while. We have not seen each other in person in I don't even know how long.
Probably like a year, bro,
So, it probably has been that long. It's kind of
or
crazy.
longer. Yeah, because
Um, so thanks
you're
for coming
always
on the
busy.
show.
Actually, you're always busy,
I
or you were always busy.
correct. I am
You're
certainly
always
not busy now. Unless I'm painting my house, I am not busy now.
nice.
So, Adam, there's a couple things I wanted to talk about. You are a creative director at your company, Proxy AV, and the kind of standard question I ask everybody for the first segment is, how did you get started in the business?
Wow, I got started in the business wanting to be a rapper, and I was no good at that. And then I wanted to become a DJ, and I was no good at that. And I thought, well, somebody's got to learn how all the gear works together. And I started doing that, DJ, hooking up sound systems for parties, and then working at a radio station. And that's kind of like the start of it, right? So
Nice. I did not know that, and part of the reason
nobody
why why I started this show was because I wanted to have conversations with my friends
nice.
without being awkward about it. And I feel like this is a better platform to do that. So,
Yeah,
I
nice,
always
nice.
feel awkward just being coming up to you and being like, "Hey, how'd you get started?" It just feels like a weird
Oh, come on,
question
man.
to just ask out of the
You
blue.
know you could, but I get the premise. But yeah, yeah, yeah.
For sure.
You've seen me
So,
naked before, so
whoa. Wow. There is no disclaimer
yeah.
on this show.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. This is safe for work. But
Um
yes,
so at the time, did you have a full-time job at the time when you started?
no, shit, actually, no, I was in high school, and I
Okay.
did have a full time job. I worked at a bike shop, so I used to work at a bike shop all throughout high school. American River Bike Shop. It's no longer around, but one of the guy's name was Jeff Bogle from Bogle Wine, a local, and a local winery in Clarksburg. One of the Bogles owned a bike shop, and I went to go work for him when I was 13 and stayed there until I graduated from college. I'm sorry, high school. So
And then
I've been
when
working
I
since I was
met you,
13, bro. Been working all,
that's
straight.
just grinding.
Oh yeah, holy shit.
um, so I know when I met you, you had a full-time job and you were doing the AV on the side. Tell me a little bit how you balanced working a full-time job and doing the AV stuff on the side.
So when you and I first met, I was working for the Federal Aviation Administration. I was a radar automation support specialist, which is just a fancy word for I took a lot of radar data and made it coherent to air traffic controllers looking at a scope. At the time, it was called Arts 3E, Common Arts, and I did AV on the side because all of my buddies own production companies. I know Luke. Then there was Paul Tisa, then Daryl. So when I left AV and went to tech school for aviation. And then after about 4 or 5 years of tech school and becoming certified in radar automation, I started getting calls from my friends saying, "Hey, would you freelance? Or we got a real important client. We know that you seem to enjoy the process of troubleshooting, and that's how it is." I just started working with my buddies, and it allowed my wife to be a stay at home mom while I went and worked in aviation, and then moonlighted as an audiovisual technician.
That's awesome, and it's good that you had that job that had some flexibility. I mean, not not a ton of flexibility, I'm sure, but enough that you could still do the side stuff. That's awesome. And
Yeah,
then
what I
you
would do is
ultimately,
I would just take vacation, so I would, instead of actually taking a legitimate vacation, I would take leave and work. So a lot of times, I was just working 7 days a week, but I was enjoying it, there's a big difference between working 70, 80 hour weeks doing something you love, not like, but love, versus you just doing it for a paycheck. So, you know, it really afforded me a lot of opportunities for the family and to see the world too. So very,
for
very
sure,
fortunate.
for sure. So speaking of family, you now have your own AV company, and you have one of your sons working for you. Tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about how it is having your son work for you, and what that means to you as a business owner, but also as a father.
It is interesting. It is probably the biggest blessing that one could you know that you could have bestowed upon you, because you're getting to model proper work ethic for your kids, which is unique. And it just so happens that my son loves the business, from shooting testimonials for the company to doing a little bit of lighting design to now being a not a graphic artist, but a multimedia artist. So it all fits, and he's got a big giant warehouse here to practice on. So it's really cool working working with your kids. Now, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I have wanted to fire him, and that gets kind of awkward, because how do you fire somebody and then have to go home and eat dinner with them? But I've not fired him yet, so he's a good kid. He just needs some direction sometimes.
That's good though. That's good. I think that's healthy.
Yeah, yeah,
Um.
yeah. Or unhealthy,
So,
depending on which day of the week it is.
sure, sure. So, tell me a little bit about. I mean, and the kind of the theme of this show too is, we're talking about how our industry is changing, and tell me a little bit about how the whole pandemic has affected your business and your events.
That's interesting, because it has affected it 100%. Most of the time in business, things affect like a percentage. You lose a major client, you gain a major client, and for all of the work just to come to a screeching halt, and it's just been surreal. I think everybody in the business is waiting to get back to work, but it's impacted it, thoroughly. At the moment, we're only servicing one of our clients who were contractually obligated to continue to do many of the events that we were doing for them in a brick and mortar situation, or at their, so, but other than that, everything has come to a complete halt. Now, we've had a lot of people push dates, but I don't see an immediate future where anybody is doing any shows of any significant size in the year 2020
Yeah,
consistently.
I always really thought of myself as a freelancer. I was pretty well diversified. I had a lot of different clients. I had a lot of different AV companies I worked for in a lot of different spaces. Broadcast and live concerts and corporate events. And I never thought in a million years that it would all just stop. I
Yeah,
thought I'd
you
be
were
able to
geographically
jump in.
diversified too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought I'd be able to pick up something somewhere, but it's very surreal, and especially with the outlook of it, we really don't know when we're going to be able to do anything. I know Facebook and Microsoft have pushed all their events through like June of 2021,
Yeah, yeah.
and so they kind of set the precedent, and we're kind of at the mercy of our vendors or our clients. And I know a lot of clients are kind of looking to the AV companies for help on how they can restructure things and still do some of the stuff that they wanted to do. Can you tell me a little bit about, what are you seeing people shift to? I mean, I know obviously Zoom's a popular thing. Um, but there's only, I mean, you do have limitations with streaming, and a lot of the revenue that was coming in is not able to come in. So
No, no, I mean, we're not even seeing like fractions of it. I mean, even I may tell people, hey, we had four things going on last week. Oh, that's great. Like, yeah, until you realize that encompass, probably we recouped maybe 8%. So we lost almost 100% of all our clients. We lost 99% of our clients, and the 1% of the clients that we have left, their revenues are down 85, 90%. So even though we have a
right.
lot of shows going on, so like most people, the first couple of weeks, I just, for the first time, I said, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to try to, figure this thing out. I'm just going to wait. But then 1 week turns to 2 weeks, turns to 3 weeks. What are we in, like week 8 or 10?
I
And it
stopped
seemed like,
counting.
yeah, exactly. I mean, shoot, if I wake up and even know the day of the week it is, that just feels terrible. You know what I'm saying? So I still come to the shop every single day, even on the weekends, because I need patterns. Now I don't do much at the shop except think. But, back to your question, we're seeing some people, some businesses have a natural, the way they did their live events lends to a very easy one-to-one translation over until virtual. So we have a company that it's a venture capital company, and they're constantly showcasing startups, and they're showcasing startups to companies within different vertical areas, whether it's IoT or real estate or fintech or supply chain. So their in-person meeting translates very easily to an online situation. Some of the difficulties, though, are what we're seeing is for like your annual dinners, right? Where it was a gala, maybe it was an association and they had a black tie gala, or for association XY, and people would meet in a ballroom and then they would give out awards. Those are very difficult to translate from a brick and mortar hotel rectangle onto a virtual event, and I still haven't quite figured out that one, because those things are primed for being great networking opportunities for the people that belong to the association. And I haven't really figured out, or I haven't seen anybody really figure out a really good one-to-one. One of the things that we are telling our clients, because we have clients that are also in the personal development space and the motivation space, and then also the teaching space. So the teaching space, once again, that's another easy one to kind of go from a hotel rectangle to an online situation. But motivation gets a little bit tricky. How do you keep people, in front of a computer watching content for 8, 9 hours? So we try to steer our clients away from looking to do exactly one-to-one solutions. So there's been some websites like hopin.to, which is, like a Zoom on steroids. They probably wouldn't appreciate me saying that, but it's a Zoom on steroids. They have a backstage, they have an expo hall, and they do a pretty good job of doing one-to-one. But the more I try to figure out how to entertain people on Zoom calls or streaming, the more I'm trying to pull away from, like, let's not try to make this a online live event. Let's think about radio programming. Let's think about, like This American Life or Snap Judgment, and let's produce it like a like you would a television show or something like that. Let's not try to hold people's attention for 8 hours on a Saturday in the spring. That's crazy. So
Hmm.
we're struggling with it, like most people are, trying to find a happy medium.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down. I mean, a lot of events that I would do, they're very good networking events, and that's why a lot of people come is to schmooze with other people, go have drinks at the bar, and all that kind of stuff.
That's so
And
much of it.
yeah, Um, so moving forward, I feel like we're moving more towards. I mean, once you go to the streaming, you have to then revert back to live events again when this all is over. Um, where do you think the lines may change after this? Like
Oh,
where do
it's
you see
definitely
the
going to be a hybrid situation. It's
yeah.
definitely going to be a hybrid situation because there's so many obstacles for our industry to overcome. First, when are we going to be allowed to meet? Right? When will the governor say this is okay? Right? So then there's that hurdle. Then you have to get people willing to travel from all over the country. And I have clients that over 30, at any given point, 1/3 of his audience is international. So first hurdle is when will they allow people to meet? Second hurdle is who's going to be willing to come out in numbers to justify these large budget shows. And then three,
Mhm.
who's going to have the disposable income, right? So we're talking about even once we get rid of the whole COVID situation, there's still an underlying economy that's in shambles. And the longer we get away from, doing business as usual, the worse the economy is going to be, and the more difficult it is to going to, to see it kickstarted like that. So, and then even if you find people with the disposable income were allowed to come in and want to do it, are there going to be the numbers of people to support, budgets up six-figure production budgets? And then what about the supply chain, right? What about the part of the equation that gets people to the event? Meaning, what's air travel going to look like? How expensive is that going to be? So back to your initial question, I think you're going to see hybrids. You're going to see events that are going to almost always be streamed, some part of it, and where they're not even going to try to get everybody into a room until there's some type of cure. And as far as I know, viral infections aren't the easiest things to cure. But I'm not a virologist, and I'm not going to even pretend to act like that I know that situation. One thing that you're going to see at hotels, though, you're going to see temperature scanners. You're going to see a lot of wash stations. You'll see a lot of mask, which I don't know how anybody can be in a mask all day. It's the most uncomfortable thing. Going to be miking people up dressed like that, right? And so I think you'll see that there are some other photos too that I sent where they have partitions there. So that's from Stewart. I know most of you guys in your audience are familiar with Stewart. So they're coming out with things like that. So I think you'll see that, but I, I think you're going to see a large number go under, and the ones that are going to go under first, and the ones that are over leveraged who just bought, 3 mil LED tiles and just have a lot of debt, or they have a lot of leases that they have to continue to service, and there's nothing coming in, like nothing, and we've heard about the drive through graduations, which I'm still baffled by. I still don't understand how people think that's a good idea, but I'm all for seeing what ideas. But I think what you're going to see a lot of is people going into a studio and people having a few people there and then doing that. But even for a creative person like myself, this is very difficult to see around this thing. I've never had any issues with my imagination until now. Like I literally can't see around this thing, so I'm just pretty much wiping 2020 clean. I think you will see some live events, but I think they're going to be like outdoor events, and I think there's going to be like a Celebrate America or a Fourth of July, an outdoor event where they'll close off part of a street, and they'll just try to keep people from clustering together. But I think the first things you're going to see are outdoor events where streets are blocked off. But that's not enough for the whole industry to eat off of.
Well, and going back to what you were talking about before, kind of the more produced live events, let's call it, like where they're pre-recorded things and you shoot it in a very different way. You shoot it like a TV show, like you said. Um, are you seeing people that are trying to go that direction, or
Oh,
are you
definitely.
seeing a lot of people that are just kind of waiting?
No, because a lot of people. Somebody's got to be the first one out the gate. 2 weeks ago, I watched two people, and they did a live event, and they were big names in their industries, and I was watching it, just trying to critique it, and see what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, and it was, they went to a studio and they had a giant LED wall behind them, and they had some lights and they had a DJ, so it felt like a telethon, which I didn't particularly care for that telethon feel, but kudos for the person to be the first one in her industry that I've seen to just go for it. And then another gentleman that I saw was by the name of Pete Vargas, and I liked some of the things that his production company did. But it was in a studio. Yeah, so I think the things that are going to lend themselves for being a candidate for this are teaching, right? So that's always been the case where you can go to Coursera or any number of or Linda, and people are learning. So for us, it would be like Vectorworks training, Granimate training, E2 training. We're used to getting it um, from online, so that's going to be a no brainer. That'll be great. And then the second one was gosh, I forgot. I drew a blank. Definitely teaching people how to do stuff is going to be easily translate. Certification programs where you're being certified, which is another training. I think what's going to be a little bit harder are your personal development, your black tie dinners, and I think the first company that really puts themselves out there like we produce events like television shows, and get away from thinking of this as audiovisual, because it's no longer audiovisual. You now are competing with YouTube, NBC, sports, a beautiful Saturday morning. So I would stop looking at this as an AV event and start thinking about it as programming, and try not to capture their attention for more than 4 or 5 hours. I mean, the best producers in the world can't keep people's attention for 4 or 5 hours, so you should probably not do that unless you got some really compelling content, or if you're teaching something. Some of our clients have been able to keep people online for 7 hours, but they were teaching them stuff and breaking them off into groups so that they could be told and then immediately interact with somebody that was in the same situation as them. So,
Yeah,
what are you
and
seeing?
one thing that
What are you seeing out there?
the inside of my house, that's pretty much what I'm seeing at this point. Uh, not really. I mean, I still talk to a lot of people in the industry, certainly, but it's pretty slow
Good answer.
overall.
Good.
And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good answer. That's awesome.
um, with a lot of this, produced stuff where they're going to YouTube and they're, even like the TV shows and stuff are going to, we're filming in people's houses and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you. I know you are a stickler for quality, and I've always really admired your attention to detail and all that. So,
Thank you.
with that being said, what are your thoughts on we'll say TV shows or however you want to say it, um, who are sacrificing the quality, which I understand is kind of necessary in this environment, but I feel like as a collective public, we've become okay with people doing Zoom calls live to television with laundry in the background, and like I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
feel like there's a producer somewhere who's like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it cuts both ways, right? Because I think in the beginning, quality is always going to suffer, and then technology is going to, like, oh wow, I can do this. I mean, if you think about the flip camera, right? That had terrible audio on it, but people were still doing it and uploading it. Now if you put a video out on YouTube and you had flip camera audio quality, people would just be like, "Man, you must be an idiot," because how hard is that? So I think in the beginning, people will accept, you know, just, oh wow, look, they actually showed up, but that was like 5 minutes ago. Now people are going to want to see quality, and we've already saw for the one client where we do a lot of stuff for her, they're making all of their Zoom hosts use a virtual branded background that their marketing
Nice.
team sent out. So already they are trying to get away from, the obvious unprofessional look. I mean, there's so many. I mean, you just see it nonstop. Like some people, there's like a mile of headroom above their head, right? And you're like, wow, like, can you not see how that looks? So we've handed out like best practices documents. We do a lot of rehearsals. So for every Zoom call that we do for the for this venture capital company, every single one is preceded by at least one or two rehearsals. We're rehearsing switching screen shares. We're rehearsing contingencies. So, like for our Zoom calls, if it's very important and these folks are doing a keynote, we will actually have them call in over the phone, but still use their camera, so people can see and hear them. And Zoom keeps it in sync. I don't know what magic fairy they've got running on treadmills, but they keep it in sync. But the reason why we do that is so that if something happens with their internet connection, then at least we still have the keynote. So we've already moved past just where anything's acceptable and asking them, hey, is this going to be the room that you're hosting this in? And we've even gone so far as to pre-record their keynote in case something happens and just make sure that they're wearing the same thing. So we've already are into the aesthetic realm already, because whether you know it or not, people are picking up on aesthetic cues, whether you have them or not, right? So people realize consciously or subconsciously if you come into their house and your shirt's not tucked in, or if you look scruffy, or if you got an unkept beard, people are noticing that consciously or subconsciously or both. So we're already starting to see it from one of our clients that no, it has to look neat, but doesn't always
That,
work out that way.
that's good. I'm glad to hear that people are actually paying attention to that because I
Yeah,
see. I mean, like watching Jimmy Fallon or something. Like the
yeah,
camera quality's okay, but I feel like the production is suffering, and I understand it's a difficult time, and you got to have these. Got to have people in their houses who either have to set up the equipment or are just using their laptop or whatever.
yeah,
But then you watch like I'm a big Survivor fan, so we watched Survivor the other night, and
mm,
the art department sent Jeff Probst, who's the host, a crate full of equipment. And
yep.
he built this whole backdrop and everything. He's got like cameras on tripods and lights, and it's like I really don't feel like it's that difficult to up the quality to an acceptable level, in my opinion. Something other than a laptop webcam or laptop microphone or whatever. I feel like it doesn't take much to get there, and it's a drastic improvement in my mind.
Exactly. It's one of the things too. I very rarely speak on a Zoom call. I am normally behind the scenes. But even for this call, you think, okay, well, how are you going to present yourself as somebody creative and you're using your onboard camera for your MacBook Pro? So for this interview, I specifically set up two lights, key and a fill, and purposely have a vanishing point in the background. Like I don't have, I thought about putting some uplights, but then I was like, it's going to be so obvious that I did that. But then I also started thinking about doing like the behind the music and putting up like road cases. He's like, dude, you don't have road cases in your hallway. Like, what do you know? So even me, I said, we have a GH4. Let me set up a GH4. So when we do talk to clients, that as somebody that's selling creativity, we present ourselves in the best light. So people like you and I, when we show up on Zoom calls, we should definitely have a hair light. Like Tyler obviously has a hair light. Well, he has hair. So the need for the hair light, and then obviously you can tell that he has some uplight behind him for separation's sake. There you go. So yeah, it's people like us that will be leading the quality, and then and what will happen is potential clients will see that quality and not even realize that it's there until they now don't see it, and then they'll be like, "Well, I want it to look nice," and then people like Tyler and myself will get the call, and yeah, it doesn't take much to just have a little pop up. What do they call those little pull ups? Pull up, put it behind you, make sure it's not shiny, and I don't even have any hair light. I probably should. I'm looking at my video. I probably should have some hair light, but so I'm gonna eat
Yeah,
my
I
own
mean,
dog.
I
But it's
think
difficult to set up
especially
3
on.
point lighting if you don't have help. So here is when I was trying to set the focus. I actually had to have this guy stand in because you can't focus a camera. So literally, I have a prime lens, but I didn't have anybody to stand in. So I got this guy, put his head on a stick. So he is.
So what do you use that for normally?
I don't. I don't. This was
Okay.
just a prop sitting on a. I got bored and taped this guy, and then when I was getting ready for this, I was actually so bored. I was getting ready for this interview like on Tuesday, by the way, and I noticed that I was soft. The focus, and I like, how the hell am I going to focus? So I grabbed a mic stand and this guy's head, and he's got a or she, gender agnostic. It has a old school headset, and this gave me some sharp lines. I could focus. I went way off topic on that.
No worries. I was actually gonna try to do something here. I don't know if I'm gonna make it happen, but we're gonna try it.
Cool, some fancy.
Yeah. Cool. I think it'll actually work. Let me see. All right. So a little behind the scenes of my setup because nobody's really seen it except my wife who's critiqued it, which is okay. So
We're going to my
we're going to my phone. I'm gonna mute this mic here. Okay, perfect. So we got a light over here, and
Oh wow, you got one right in front of your face. That's
so
awesome.
we
Yeah.
got one there. We got one there, and then I got this mic. There's my camera there, my little POV camera, and then
Is that the Sony A7S?
it is the A6300.
And I said
And then
A7S.
my
I have lost track of all those different Sony models. I just rattled off the first thing
oh
that
yeah.
came off my head. But yeah,
So that's what we're looking at for my crazy setup here.
that looks pretty cool.
And then let me see if I can get back to this now. So
I like how
yeah,
you jumped on your phone like that. That's pretty dope.
I didn't know if it was gonna work, but I was like, you know what? It's live. We're gonna try it. Why not?
Yeah.
So that's actually over NDI. So my phone's on the Wi-Fi, so I can actually there's an app, just an NDI capture card thing.
Yeah.
I can just pop that up and then go to it. But then I don't know if you heard. I think it took my mic off the phone at first.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I noticed that.
yeah, I'm all for experimenting. That's how we learn.
TriCap, y'all NDI'd up too, right? That's
Yeah,
when that
I've played around on the TriCaster a little bit, but not enough.
I'm not a
And
fan of the TriCaster, but boy, the people that I know that have them love them.
I did a whole broadcast on the TriCaster because that was what the client had, and they wanted it to look like kind of like college game day. So we had like
Mm-hmm.
news anchors sitting at a desk and like pre-recorded packages, and everything
Wow.
was in the TriCaster. And
Yeah.
lower thirds, video playback, graphics, everything. And I made it work, but it definitely wasn't easy, especially just being me running graphics and playback and switching and calling cameras and directing, and it was a lot. And I think that's a lot of what the TriCaster, the problem I have with it is it's too much in one box. And
And it
it
runs
sets a
in
bad
Windows.
precedent. Yes. Yes.
Hold up.
And I think it sets a
Yeah,
bad precedent for other
yeah,
people.
yeah. I'd turn the
So
AC.
so yeah. So the future of events for you, you think you're going to go back to business as usual, or you think it's going to what do you think's going to happen? Let's say 2021. Are you pivoting
No,
your business at all, or is it
Yeah, we've pivoted our business. We now fight terrorists overseas. We pivoted so much we're no longer even doing production. No, we've I hate to even say pivoted because people are acting like Zoom is something new. It's like we're streaming. Okay, cool. We know how to
Sure.
stream. We've been streaming. There's nothing new there. So that pivot wasn't a hard pivot. Um, it's weird, man, because I have never had an issue thinking creatively and outside of the box until now. And I'm reminded that optimism is not an outlook. Optimism is an ingredient to an outlook, but it is not the outlook itself. So I am still kind of waiting because there is no, as far as what I can see, there's nothing inherently beneficial about being the first mover, right? It's not a good or a bad thing. I don't think you gain from being the first mover, right? You can ask MySpace, right? How many people have MySpace pages? Well, they were the first movers in the industry, but then Facebook sat back and kind of waited a little bit. Napster was the first mover in their industry, and now they don't exist. So I don't find a need to rush in, right? Because we know fools rush in, but I don't know. I mean, it's weird. It's really weird. I've been taking a lot of calls, talking to producers, and we're really having to think like a creative agency versus a production agency because we're trying to come up with new things, new events, and which is why I'm putting more eggs in an outdoor event because that's the only thing that I can fathom happening. But I don't fathom that being enough to run a company on. So I would love to say that I had something that I was focusing on, something that I was thinking about, man, but I'm still just waiting to see where our event kind of settles in, which is why I've been doing a lot of research to see what other people are doing. And I am following a lot of people. There was a production company out of LA called 1540 Productions, and they did a mock up of what a red carpet event would look like in Hollywood, and it's interesting. I sent over a couple of mock diagrams of what a properly social distance ballroom would look like, and then that looks equally ridiculous. I mean, look at this: you got 10 feet in between each table. I think they're limiting the people at the table to a couple. Now you're serving food, which means you're going to have to serve food differently. And there's another photo I think that is classroom style, and that even looks equally ridiculous because obviously you have $100,000 or more. That's actually looks like about $120,000 production, and there's not even any seats in there. I mean, look. Every row and every column and every row is a freaking aisle, 6 feet apart. So how do you justify putting that much gear? I mean, you got more people working the show than you have actually sitting in the show. So you'll see stuff like this maybe for press conferences, maybe your city events, but fighter operator and doing a three projector dual blend and all that. It's going to be the conveyance of pure information. I think, you know, big budget, stuff where you're projection mapping all over shit inside of a ballroom. Man, I just I have a knee jerk reaction to never think negative, but the positive thing is the industry will come back. That is not. I have no doubt about that. My main focus is on the timeline. And the question is, how long can you stay in business while you wait this thing out? Right. So I don't know. I am still, we have to come back in after the summer and see where this thing lands, man, because, we were fortunate to get PPP funding, but that keeps us afloat for 2 more months. And typically when you do bridge capital, you're bridging your business from a known slow period to a, yeah, guess what, we have a lot of business in the fall, so I just got to get through the slow summer. Well, you're gonna have a slow summer, a slow fall, a slow winter, and things will start coming back slowly. But
You're
I don't
bridging
know,
to the
man.
unknown.
Yeah, you're bridging to the unknown, and then how much of your capital that you have in reserves are you going to dedicate to a sinking ship, right? I mean, in a capitalist society, if a business can't support itself, it's supposed to, you know. So
Right. Well, and I think a lot of businesses, even businesses that were financially safe, we'll call it, had reserves in the bank and all that kind of stuff. How long does that last? People don't save up 2 years of expenses as an emergency. Like
well,
that's
the
not
thing
like
too,
my definition of an emergency.
well, yeah, and the thing too is, imagine you're a business owner and you're looking at, you know, reserves. It's not like those reserves belong to the business. I mean, they could obviously be withdrawn as profits. So if I'm a business owner and I've got 18 months worth of float capital in the bank, you still have, there are certain things that can't be deferred. Even if you lay people off, you still have insurance as well. Obviously, our insurance will be seeing money come back. But the problem is, as business owners in production, we pay insurance on what we believe we're going to do, So right now, I don't know what our policy is, but every year our insurance company comes and says, okay, what do you think your gross receipts are going to be? And you say X amount, let's say you say, oh, it's going to be 1 million this year. So you pay money on the million that you think your gross receipts are going to be. So even the owners, we're not going to see any of that money come back to us till the end of the year, because nobody will have gross receipts equaling what they thought in January. So you still have to pay insurances. You still have to pay healthcare. Healthcare is going up. It's not going down. You have to pay rent or lease on your warehouse. And then if you lease gear from Myers or Ascend, or nobody, I shouldn't even say Ascender. Nobody's messing with Analog Way unless you're in France. But let's say you lease an E2, you still have to service that loan or that lease agreement. So, and we just signed up for a bigger warehouse right 2 weeks before everything shut down. We just signed on the dotted line to go into a bigger warehouse, and they're trying to hold us to it. So I'm like, blood from a turnip, man. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you do know what's going on, right?
So I
So,
actually had someone comment on our Facebook stream, uh,
oh, it's
and
live.
Mr. Tom Jones, he says, now as it was once before, content really is the key, and it's not so much the environment, but it's actually the content specifically that really needs to drive it. Whether it's a web stream or whatever it is, you can't rely on the lights and all that stuff of the environment to
Flash and trash.
you know yeah, that's exactly what he said. He said in times past, content needs to reign supreme, and you can't rely on flash and trash. And so
And
that's very different.
he's absolutely right. I mean, that's always been the case. But the thing is, if you've talked to anybody that's ever been to, and Tyler, you and I do a lot of similar events. I mean, like personal development or associations and stuff like that, right? So each one of those events has their own kind of like draw, right? So obviously, a music festival, the draw is music, but it's really the party. It's really camaraderie. So content reigns supreme, right? And content is really going to reign supreme when you're talking about teaching people something. Like, this is how you assign an effects to a bus, or this is how you use a grand MA to do, this is how you use Vectorworks to do pre-visualization, whatever, what have you. But remember that a lot of people go to events specifically for the networking, specifically. right? And in some music festivals, it's not all not even about the music really. It's all about, you know, going to the
The
middle of the
atmosphere.
desert, the
Yeah.
atmosphere, right? So yeah, you're right. In a very scientific, nuanced way, content is king. But people were social creatures, right? I mean, hell, we can't even survive on our own without another creature until we're like 5 or 6 years old, right? So that's why I think you will see an outdoor event. I think the outdoor somebody, is going to be focused on probably like right smack dab in, high summer time period, July. I think you'll see some type of celebrate America, or breaking the shackles of the quarantine. It'll mix it all up with the 4th of July. I think you'll see street closures. And one of the things that I've been kind of thinking about is bicycles. So imagine you shut down 2 miles with your downtown area, and I'm not a really fan of the car idea, because who the hell wants to be in a car on a nice day? Plus, marshaling cars, but a bike. Imagine if you're holding a bike, you're already naturally kind of creating a little bit of a barrier as you're walking the bike. So what I think is you'll see maybe some downtowns close the streets off. If I was in downtown Sacramento, I would, sell it like, okay, let's bring all the vendors, so like your local restaurants, have them come out and put up something curbside, and just have them do one signature dish, right? So once again, you're not getting people in a queue, and you just kind of keep the flow of traffic moving. And even if they're walking a bike, that's going to create a natural little barrier. So I think you'll see outdoor events. Content is definitely king, and it's going to be more important. But I don't have an answer for the networking. How do you network with people, in this with the same efficacy as you did when they were face to face, right? That's something I'm still creatively trying to juggle juggle with. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
It's definitely a tough time.
Yeah, it's
And I
interesting.
mean,
It's
I love your thoughts on some of those ideas. I mean, I think that's like the drive through. I won't call it drive through, but kind of a bike through like food court type of thing. Um, and I even think you take some of those kinds of things and you incorporate a stage with a band playing. People don't have to
Yep.
congregate; they can kind of
Yeah.
cruise by, and you know, I don't know. I think a lot of the hard part is that I think people uh, are naturally going to congregate, and getting them to not do that, I think, is obviously the most challenging part of that puzzle.
I think if they're handicapped with a bike, that, because I don't know, that's the closest my imagination can get to what an outdoor event. What the soonest we would see an event, is an outdoor event. And I think when we get back to normal, you'll see a lot of and I have to say this slowly, um, retina retina scans. I always want to say the other R word, which is the wrong part to be scanning, but retina. I think um, you'll see that out on hotels, as you enter. I can't imagine what that's going to do to slow down. We had an event still on the books. Actually, it's a 6,000 person event at Zappos Theater, and I'm just trying to feel, how do you get 6,000 people anywhere, right? And historically we've needed those numbers in order to justify the expense of the set,
Sure.
right? So, I still have a lot of shows on the books that I personally don't think is going to happen. I'm all for them happening, but and I
I think a
hope the
lot of people
PSA.
are just. I think a lot of people are just waiting. Like, we're not going to cancel it yet. We're going to wait and see what the next 2 months
Well,
holds
you
or
know why
whatever.
is that our clients don't want to cancel. They want the hotel to cancel, because
Gotcha.
the for the obvious implications of how easy it is for the hotels don't want to cancel. the same thing they've always wanted, right? Heads in beds and
Yeah.
forks on tables, right? And that,
Yep.
but and in our clients, how do you get 4, 5, 6,000 people to show up, you know? And we've got one client that we were going to see 3,000, 3,000 people. And anytime that he queries the audience, 25 to 33% of the audience came from another country. And, so
Um,
yeah,
Tom brings up another point, which is one that I've actually thought about a little bit. Is so what about having smaller meetings in multiple locations? So say you take your 6,000 person meeting and you break it into six 1,000 person meetings, or maybe smaller depending on what our restrictions are at that point. And his point is, yeah, you do limit the number in that one location, but
yeah,
that only solves a portion of it, right? Um,
yeah.
but if we're limited to 100 people at an event, okay, well, can you make that six remote events across the country, which could mean more business for us potentially. But then how do you throw it to the different venues? Maybe you have a keynote at that place and then a keynote at that place, and they all are remoted in together. And how would how can we make all that infrastructure work? Which I think is a pretty fascinating avenue to go down, certainly.
We actually am working with the client right now for something they're doing in the fall, and they want remote events. But I also know that they have budget realities that put some downward pressure on that ambition. So you'll definitely see that, right? We've seen that before. I think they're gonna. Well, we know for a fact there's gonna be a lot of production companies that go out of business. A
I
lot,
think so. I mean, I think so for sure.
and then you're gonna have a glut of technicians, and they're going to fracture off, and then you're going to see a lot of consultants and people thinking, well, shit, I've got a GH4 and a computer and some lights. you know um, I think that'll happen, and then pretty soon you'll have a couple companies that do so much of this that they'll just bring it in house. They'll have like a multimedia or somebody from the media department that'll just be their job. Which is why I'm going back to waiting and watching and thinking. So like we're doing these things in parallel, right? So I'm not committed the company into any one area other than to continue to be a creative agency. And when we started the company, we focused on the creative side of production, not on the owning of big ticket items like 30K projectors, LED walls, line arrays. We just weren't interested in large capital expenditures without supporting data that said, okay, that purchase makes sense, and here's some short runway on a potential ROI on that. So we're still focused on the same thing, creativity. To go back to what the guest talked about, content, making it look good. That's always important. But yeah, you'll see companies go out of business. The first ones that will do are the ones that have all this you know gear. Obviously, these same companies will pivot. They'll find an empty room in their warehouse, they'll clean it up, they'll turn something into a green room, and then they'll invite people into the hinterlands of Pennsylvania and Amish country and be like, all right, come to our studio and film something. So I mean, we already have seen that, right? We've already seen that pivot. But right now I'm watching, waiting, and man, it'd be really cool to have another W word, just kill the alliterations. I'm watching, waiting, and being
Wishing.
always looking, wishing, looking for an opportunity, constantly trying to
For
figure out,
sure.
which is, some of the ideas that we talked about were of a direct result of me trying to say, this is how we would attack it. Or some of our producer friends have challenged us. How do you create a VIP experience on an online situation? And the more and more and more I thought about it, the more I was like, let's not focus on doing a one-to-one? Why do we need a reception area? Why do we need a backstage? Why do we need an expo area and breakout rooms? Like, we don't need to just take everything one-to-one, right? We just need to keep it under 4 hours, really good content, have some interstitial music, something to break it up, plenty of interactions, be brilliant, be brief, and then be gone. Stop trying to make this an 8 hour event. I wouldn't personally. I would. The people that have asked me, I've said stay away from, trying to keep people's attention that long. Because the live event that I watched was like 2 Saturdays ago, and it was a beautiful Saturday morning. Like I literally got called outside to enjoy the day, and I was like, "This is like." And these people are teaching people like high performance. These people are teaching people how to, and I'm like, okay, these are healthy, young, creative people. Why are they in for 8 hours on a Saturday and it's beautiful? I know they're all over the world, so I was like,
Well,
okay, note to self: don't try to keep somebody's attention for 8 hours.
well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, Adam, and thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I really
Yeah,
wanted
man,
to
it's good.
talk to somebody about quality, and you were the first guy to come to mind. So
Cool, man. I wish
thank
I
you for
was dressed more
thank you for doing it.
stylishly. I don't look like I have a lot of style.
No, you do, man. You do, my friend. One quick answer to a question that was on there was Leo was asking what we were using for remote cameras and all that. So Leo, we're using a program called vMix to do our encoding and all that. I have on my end a Sony A6300. And basically, how it works is I send Adam a link, and he opens it in a web browser, and he can select what camera he wants to use. He is currently using a GH4. Um, but yeah, it's all through a web browser on his end, and he gets a return feed of what I'm sending to program, and plus a little window uh, of a kind of a view of what his camera sees also if he's not on program. So that's pretty much it. I kind of started this show to a talk to my friends about production and learn some new things, and b I wanted to mess around with streaming and kind of get myself in situations where I didn't know what I was doing exactly and learn from them. So that's why we're doing it, and that's also why we're doing it live, because I want you all to see my mistakes so you can call me out on them later. I'm all for that. So
And
I
Tyler
think
has
that's
never
it
seen
for
me naked.
today.
That was a joke. we've never
That's it.
we've never even roomed together because everybody knows
We have
that
not.
Sean Reed is the best roommate that anybody could have on the show.
And Sean Reek is
Where's
most
that
definitely not watching this show. Oh,
God? Where?
okay.
Well, go ahead.
He doesn't have the internet. I don't think he has the internet.
Yeah, he's all Alex Jones. I don't know. I don't care.
So
He's a great roommate.
Mr. Hampton has a question for you.
Little brothers
Mr.
on. What's
Hampton
going
wants to know what you think techs should do with their downtime.
on? Dude, study. Always study the game. Do exactly what Tyler's doing here. Is if the whole world of our industry, a lot of it is going online. Start learning Zoom. Start learning. There's many different. You don't really learn Zoom. Let's not be hyperbolic here. I would practice with any streaming software. If you don't have Wirecast, I would focus on OBS because it's free and it's just like Wirecast. OBS is free, and exercising, reading a good book. Darren Hardy has a book called The Compound Effect, which I know our dear friend Chris has because I saw it in his house. So I would read and exercise and study the game and stay as close to the game as possible, unless you plan on leaving the game, in which case, no matter what industry you get in, always study it. And one of the things that has helped me in my career, I've been a bicycle mechanic. I've been radar automation support specialist, and I've been an owner, and I've been an AV tech. In every single one of those fields, I always found someone who was at the top of their game, and I modeled my behavior and after them. So whatever field you go into, there's always one or two people that kind of live vicariously through it, take the job serious. So latch on to those guys. But I wish I had some more sage wisdom in what to do in all this downtime. But if you believe your craft is going to be there, study the hell out of it. Because if people don't come, if techs don't emerge out of this smarter at what they do, then they've just wasted their time. Because I know all of us have dreamed about having time off, and now that we have time off in spades, now it's time to remember some of those projects. So I would build something, I would work on something, I would focus on something.
I think the other thing, at least for me personally, that I still haven't quite gotten to, but it's one thing I want to work on in this environment, is having a routine, having
Yeah,
a productive routine. Because it's so easy to stay up till 3 in the morning playing Call of Duty and sleep until 2 in the afternoon and accomplish next to nothing.
yeah,
Um, and so, especially like even with this show, like I wanted to get it out there. Yes, we're changing the name. I don't care, but we're changing things along the way. I wanted to do it so that I could keep myself accountable to doing it.
yeah, and it keeps
So
you still glued to the game. It's I know that I have the benefit of actually leaving the house and coming to a warehouse. So that helps me, and I am here every single day, whether there's something to do or not. And even I could, for the first couple of weeks, I was watching nothing but Vectorworks tutorials and whatnot, and then the existential crisis started setting in. And like, what the hell? Why am I going to be the best at doing diagrams when the industry may not even be there? So
well,
I'm
I think I
still
think
trying.
that's why the routine for me is important, at least for mental health,
Yeah,
to have a structure still, because
yeah,
in this world right now, there's really not a routine that a lot of people are following. I feel like you don't have, like my daughter, we don't take her to school, we don't pick her up from school, we don't have that structure of our timeline throughout the day, and it's really easy to get out of that. And so it's something I'm constantly working on, trying to, get back. Um,
yeah. Even if it's just wake up and going for an hour long walk.
sure.
It's what you don't want to do is get to the end of the day and haven't done anything for an hour long except nothing, right? But I'm not gonna lie, man, it's even difficult for me. I mean, now the days of the week don't even have the same meaning that they had before.
Hmm.
I mean, it's surreal. I'm like, what day is it? Like, oh, it's Sunday. I'm like, oh, well, it feels like a Wednesday. I'm like, what the hell does a Wednesday feel like versus a Sunday? So, gosh, man, just remember that every single generation has had its challenges, right? So for some of us, it was a civil rights struggle. Maybe it was World War II. Maybe it was Vietnam, or being conscripted to fight in a war that you didn't believe in. Maybe it was the Great Depression. I think the Great Depression lasted 10 years or something like that. God forbid this is not that, but keep everything in perspective, right? So if you're living in this country, no matter how bad you have it, you're still about 90% better than almost any place in the world. And I've traveled the world, and I can't imagine what some of these folks are dealing with in some of the parts of the world that I've seen where they had nothing before this. So perspective is everything. You got people protesting and mad at the governor of Michigan. And I'm not taking any sides because we've got friends on both sides of the aisle. But remember that they're fighting to go to like Applebee's or Arby's. And there were other people that fought to just sit at a lunch counter, right? So the struggle is not as real as it was back then. Amazingly, our struggle is to do nothing, right? We're not really railing against a common enemy. We're not fighting terrorism. We're not rallying around somebody with a solution that we agree on. You know, our challenge is really just to sit quietly and do nothing and not get fat. So when you put it all in perspective, just remember that eventually it'll pass, or you'll be dead. Either way, you won't. Either way, it'll be behind you. So people have dealt with much worse. I mean, even the Cuban Missile Crisis. So I'm constantly having to put that in perspective. That as bad as this seems, is no matter how bad it gets up to this point, it there is an end to this. We just have to wait patiently or wait for our solution to make itself evident. But right now, our industry doesn't have anything to really grab onto, so it's tough.
Well, Adam,
Shouldn't we
thanks
end on a
again for joining
positive
me
note,
today.
though? Aren't you supposed to end on like a positive note or something like that? We don't want to like
Stay
what's some
focused, have a
positive
routine, come
have a
back a better
routine?
tech.
Come back and better tech, yeah, yeah, yeah. And drink more water. Never drink enough.
That is something I need to work on, certainly. I've also been doing some meditation. Meditation's very helpful.
Nice.
I use an app called 10% Happier, and they have a ton of um, different specific ones, and they have a whole category now for coronavirus sanity. So
Wow, it's crazy.
check that app out; it's pretty cool. Um, but yeah,
10%.
I think 10% Happier.
Cool.
It's a great one. I think it's like $60 a year, maybe, or $6 a month, or something like that.
Ooh,
But
gotta
well
find
worth
something to
it.
make us happier. Yeah.
Well, Adam, thanks again for joining me. I really appreciate it, man.
All right.
I'm gonna really try and get this show on a normal schedule.
It's all good.
However, next week I am actually working on Friday, and I could not turn down a job in this environment, so I'm taking the job.
Oh,
So I'm gonna do a show on Monday next week, and it's Monday at 2 p.m. It's with a gentleman named Jason Belt, and he is the executive producer for Hollywood Game Night. And we're going to talk more about quality and production moving forward, more in the TV space. But it should be
yeah.
an interesting one. I'm trying to keep it diverse. I'm trying to keep a little bit of every environment in it, whether it's broadcast or live events or anything like that. I'm trying to keep a
Yeah.
little bit of everything. So
That's cool, man.
so yeah,
Is your
so
event in person or is it virtual?
virtual.
You
Everything's virtual.
okay.
Oh, my event. My event is
The
a
event you're
shoot.
working, will you be physically there or will you be remoting
Yes,
in?
I will be physically there, but it's just a shoot and edit thing. So it's a
Shoot, man.
pre-produced kind of thing. So it'll be fun.
Hell yeah.
But yeah. So thanks again for joining me, Adam. Check back with us on Monday at 2 p.m. and should be fun. So thanks, guys.